called in due session. Mr. Curry, would you mind leading us in prayer?
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for this opportunity to serve our students, our families in Madison County. We ask that you lead us properly and guide us as we go through these unprecedented times. We thank you, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Curry. All right. Mr. Perkins, you're up, sir.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated May 14th, 2020.
Motion.
I have a motion from District 3 and a second from District 1. Is there any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say, we'll go around. District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 5?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to remind everyone that as we go through this process, if you're not talking, if you can mute your mics, that way it will not create feedback when someone else is talking. And so it may be a little lag when you're going back and forth, in and out, but it kind of keeps everything a little bit clear. Let's move on to informational items. Presentation of the annual audit for September 30th, 2019. Ms. April Purser, State Examiner of Public Accounts.
Good evening. I'm sorry you can't see me. Our old laptops don't have cameras yet. We're getting there. This is wonderful, though. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this evening and present the audit report. Again, my name is April Purser. I'm with the State of Alabama Department of Examiners of Public Accounts, and I'm here to present the results of the annual audit of the Madison County Board of Education covering the period of October 1st, 2018 through September 30th of 2019 in accordance with Act 2006-196, Acts of Alabama, commonly referred to as the School Fiscal Accountability Act. Just to let you know, we conducted our audit in accordance with auditing standards that are generally accepted in the United States of America and the standards that are applicable to financial audits contained in the government auditing standards, which are issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. Those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We issued an unmodified opinion on the governmental activities in each major fund. Just in layman's terms, this is the best opinion that we can give. So I congratulate you. This means that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles. And also, so you know, an audit includes examining on a test basis evidence that supports the amounts and disclosures in those financial statements. Also includes assessing the accounting principles used and the significant estimates made by management, as well as evaluating the overall financial statement presentation. And we believe that our audit provides a reasonable basis for our opinion. Also, as part of obtaining reasonable assurance about whether the board's financial statements are free of material misstatement, we perform tests on compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, non-compliance, which could have a direct and material effect on the determination of the financial statement amounts. However, providing an opinion on compliance with those provisions was not the objective of our audit, and accordingly, we don't express such an opinion. The results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. In addition, we have audited the compliance of the board with types of compliance requirements described in the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, which is the OMB uniform guidance of federal guidelines that are applicable to the board's federal programs. We reported no matters involving the internal control over compliance and operation that we considered reportable conditions or material weaknesses. In our opinion, the board complied in all material respects with the requirements referred to. I want to thank you very much for all of your hard work. This was not an easy task, and many, many hours, hundreds of hours were spent getting the audits prepared and together, and I commend you all on such a wonderful job. I thank you for your time this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Purser. We appreciate you joining us this evening, and a special thanks to Ms. O'Bannon and her staff for all the hard work they do each and every day for the system and for the students of our county school system. So thank you. Mr. Perkins, I think you were unmuting.
Yes, I wanted to second that. Ms. O'Bannon and her team, they do a fantastic, phenomenal job. And clearly you can see that, based on the audit report that we received. And I'm thankful for her and what she does and her dedication to the district. And I can say that it's not just a job for her. She puts herself into it and loves what she does and loves the district. And you can see it in the things that she does. So I really appreciate her and her team. And I did want to just say that her team has worked tirelessly throughout these months, continuing to be in to do the things that is needed in the financial sense for our district. And I'm definitely appreciative to her and her team for all the work that they've done. So with that, our second item, item B, is discussion on the revised 2020-2021 school year calendar option. I just want to start by just saying that these are unprecedented times that we're living in. There are multiple, they talk about plates being in the air and spinning at the exact same time. And, we've gone through times of uncertainty and times of constant change, times that have caused everyone to have to think outside the box and to really think deeply, think hard, to make sure that we continue with the business that we do in our district. And our sole focus, our primary goal, is to maintain safety for our students and to make sure that they receive a high quality education that's absolutely second to none. And I want to say that we're dedicated to that particular fact. And I know that, our board members and talking to each one of you and talking with our staff, faculty and staff, that our district and our people work hard and diligently. And I can say I'm thankful that everyone is focused on doing what's in the best interest of our children. Some time ago, Dr. Mackey met with superintendents, and in that conversation, he went over several items of focus as we go through the COVID-19 period that we're actually entered into. And one of the things that Dr. Mackey asked districts to look at was to look at adjusting the calendars, especially for those who have earlier times, start times for their district. And of course, our district and a couple of others, several others, have start times that are early August. And so Dr. Mackey asked school systems if they would consider readjusting or pushing back the calendar to towards the end of August. And so our team took a look at the calendar and wanted to propose these particular changes as options to actually address what Dr. Mackey has asked districts to take a look at as an option for the coming school year in light of the current times in which we're living in. So what I want to do, I want to try to share my screen with you. Over these last few weeks, I think that most individuals in our district have gotten pretty good at virtual sharing of screens and things of that nature, presenting in this way. So I'm going to share my screen, which will actually share the calendar. And once this comes up, I cannot see whether or not you all can see it. I can see my screen and I can see the calendar. Dave, can you tell me if you all can see that calendar that's up on the screen?
Yeah, I can see mine. I would assume everybody else should be able to.
Okay. Yes, if you can see it, I think everybody else can see it. Now, this is a draft of of what we've kind of looked at and decided that, okay, if we push our schedule back, this is kind of what we would like it to look like in order to meet that particular need, that particular requirement, that particular ask as it relates to the start of the next school year. If you look at the calendar, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through what the calendar looks like, the changes and adjustments that were made in this particular calendar. So if you look at August, and we'll start there, our first start date in August, our start date would be for students, August the 19th. Teachers would come back on August the 10th. So our start date for teachers will be the 10th. Our start dates for students will be August the 19th. If you look in September, I know you're noticing that there are some shaded dates there. The green represents school system that's closed. And that date in September represents Labor Day, of course. So the system is closed. But on Wednesday, September the 2nd, we're actually looking at adding e-learning days. So all of those days all of those colors that you see mainly on Wednesdays are e-learning days. And we practically have one per month thus far in this particular calendar, this particular draft. So our first e-learning day would be September the 2nd. And our e-learning day, students will remain home and they will are engaged in e-learning, virtual learning. Our teachers will report to school and they will serve the students in an e-learning fashion. It gives teachers an opportunity to grade. It gives teachers an opportunity to plan. It gives teachers an opportunity to continue to develop lessons and e-learning lessons as it relates to students and making sure that they get their academic needs taken care of. But they will still be servicing students on that day. They will actually come into the school. The teachers will come to the school and work through on those e-learning days as well. So we propose one for Wednesday, the 2nd of September. There's another one on September the 30th. And if you look at October the 5th through the 9th is fall break, which is the exact same break as it was the previous calendar. We worked hard to try to make sure that we maintained as much as possible the breaks that we had previously to a degree. But our fall break will remain the same. October the 28th would be another e-learning day. When you look at November you have Veterans Day, which is on the 11th. And Thanksgiving will be the 25th, 26th, and the 27th. Students will come to school on the 23rd and 24th. If you look in December, another e-learning day would be the 16th. Students will be in school the 21st, 22nd, and have the 23rd, 24th off, as well as the 28th through January the 1st. If you look in January, you'll see that on the 15th represents in purple a half day, which also is the end of the semester. And that's an actual half day. Students will come to school a half day on that day. January the 18th, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And then on the 27th, another e-learning day, which of course is on a Wednesday. February the 15th would be President's Day on that Monday. And then February the 24th, you see an additional e-learning day. March the 17th, we have an additional e-learning day. And then March the 29th through April the 2nd would be spring break. Now, that is the same spring break that we had in the other calendar. So both of those breaks, fall break and spring break, remains the same. It does not change at all. In April, again, you notice on the 21st would be an e-learning day on that Wednesday. And then in May, The last month of the school year, you see on the 27th and the 28th would be half days. The 31st system closes, and that basically concludes our school year and outlines that particular calendar. Again, this is the proposed calendar. It is in a proposal to the board based on the request that Dr. Mackey made towards the districts, asking districts if we would consider adjusting the calendar. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go where we can see May on your screen?
Mhm.
So would graduation be on those half days, the 27th and the 28th, or would you try to, because I know we usually have dismiss early to let siblings and teachers go to graduation, so.
Yes, Dr. Minsky, have we set those dates as those graduation dates? Can you chime in on that? Dr. Minsky may be having some difficulties getting in. Let me I know we usually have graduation on those last 2 days. I just want to make sure that we actually got those 2 dates set for the VDC on those 2 dates.
Of course, that's assuming we can, by that time,
Yeah, absolutely.
and as we normally do.
Absolutely. That is assuming that we could actually do that. Let's see if I can get Dr. Minsky pulled up. He usually handles setting those graduation
He
dates.
came back and he rejoined.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that answer as soon as he gets back on, but usually we have him on those 2 dates, on those half days.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What was the rationale behind the 1 day a month on the e-learning? Is there a possibility that we can have more frequency with that, maybe twice a month? Or was there a thought process behind the once a month?
Well, what we looked at multiple options and thought that we would put in those particular dates at least once per month. We did talk about creating some additional opportunities within the schedule as it relates to possible sub days that we could possibly provide for schools. So we're looking at additional dates that we might be able to do from a system standpoint. But we're not against adding additional dates if that's something that we were able to do.
I think the biggest thing with that, I'm sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
Well, I just wondered, as far as to get staff into the mode of once a month, you got one shot to really kind of get it right. So I thought maybe a bi-weekly, maybe something to consider. Something
Yes.
to make sure they kind of get into a regiment. And if, we hope this doesn't happen, if it becomes something that's going to be even more regular, they have some experience with that.
Right, and that was one of the things we talked about. We talked about, as you know, we can't really say how the school year will go. The governor said that, based on data, they're going to look at data, and we will, the decisions will be made based on data, and so we have to kind of take those, those things into consideration. But I do think that those days give an opportunity to actually keep everyone fresh, to keep sharpening those skills in the e-learning. But it also gives our teachers an opportunity to work through some things that they need to do in their classrooms. That it gives them an opportunity to also plan, even deeper engagements for students. It gives them, opportunities to develop additional practices as it relates to e-learning, because the reality is school possibly will not look quite like it always has. We don't know exactly what that is. However, we've got to anticipate and plan for whatever scenario that we're confronted with. And this is just one of the multitude of things that we have to look at as we plan for this coming school year and each successive school year. We have a task force that we've put together so that we can evaluate all aspects of what we're doing within our system, because we want to make sure that we have the absolute best for our students. And in order to make sure we have the absolute best for our students, we have to make sure that our teachers have the absolute best, and our teachers have an opportunity to do those things that are necessary. We've got to make sure we take them in consideration as we work through these processes, because the single biggest impact on student learning and growth and development is how our teachers are able to interact. And I feel that it's our responsibility to make sure that they have those tools so that our students can have the absolute best that they can have in a traditional section, in a traditional format, as well as in a virtual format, if it comes down to that.
I think the biggest concern that we're going to find is we need to make sure that whatever the final decision is for the e-learning days, that it's published far enough in advance so that parents understand that on those dates that somebody needs to be in their household.
Absolutely.
We can't toss it out there at the last minute and say tomorrow or next week. We need to make sure it's on the calendar and somewhat set in stone before we move forward.
Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons why we brought this forward today, so that we can get ahead of it, so that we can give parents plenty of time to plan and schedule and things of that nature, because I know it's not an easy thing to try to plan and transition and things of that nature. But these times in which we're living in are different times. But I agree with you 100%. We need to make sure that it's far enough in advance, and that is one of the reasons why we're bringing this up tonight to have a discussion on it, and then to bring it up for a vote.
We have people watching, and I have a text from someone that wants to know, do they always have to be on Wednesday? And another question is, in the past, when we've had e-learning days, after school activities were canceled. And I guess they want some reassurance that that's not going to be the case.
Well, those are definitely things that, we will look at to see exactly what is the best possible things to move forward in that respect. But that is something we will take into consideration. And there are some additional, yes, Dr. Minsky, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm have a little issue with my microphone tonight.
Yeah.
Madison County schools were set for Tuesdays and Wednesdays for graduations, per Ms. Bates's question from earlier. So graduation would be 25th and 26th of that particular week.
Okay.
So do we anticipate 100% e-learning or still a paper version of this?
On our e-learning days, we are planning for full e-learning.
So the way the calendar is laid out now, the concept of how students will receive learning is every day, all students will go to school just like we traditionally have, with the exception of the e-learning days. So teachers will need to plan for basically a backpack program one day a month, or will there be a hybrid where they have to give virtual certain days of the month and then come back around?
So the students will be in school each day in a traditional way, and on e-learning days, students will stay home, will be home and actually will work through the digital platform, whether it's Google Classroom or whether it's Canvas. And that will be, they will have already been acclimated to that particular process because it's either Google Classroom for schools or Canvas for schools, and they will work through those particular platforms.
So do teachers need to have two separate modalities that they have a lesson plan for, or just those days are there for them to do planning for their regular classrooms? What is the purpose of the E-Day?
So teachers, when they're planning their lessons, the lesson that they have in a regular classroom settings are lessons that will be part of the digital platform in the Google platform or in Canvas. So it's not two separate lessons that they have to have. It's one lesson. On those e-learning days, that lesson that is adapted, that can be placed into Google Classroom or in Canvas, will be the same lesson that they're actually covering.
So if we can go to school just like we always have, what does the e-learning day do?
So the e-learning days, and I'll just, the e-learning day will give, because there's no guarantee, one, that we will be, going to school in, a complete format traditionally. It may possibly be that, some of our students, for instance, if anyone is sick or anything of that nature takes place, then we'll have to make some arrangements for that. I think I'm going to let Mr. Solly talk about the instructional piece of that. He's done some extensive work and has talked with a lot of our teams as it relates to the instructional part of that.
Will he also cover, I'm assuming our students who don't have Wi-Fi will have a packet like we have in the past, like we have now?
We will make sure that every student within our district has either access or have what they need to make sure that they get lessons done. Mr. Solly, do you want to touch on the instructional piece of that e-learning day?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is. This is a pretty extensive conversation, so.
I guess
Do you want me to answer questions, or do you, this was an hour-long conversation the other day, and I'm glad to go into it, but.
I think what I'm trying to wrap my head around is we have not historically added E-days to our calendar for the most part. We've had a couple here and there. So if we are making a calendar that is backed up to be able to return to the traditional classroom, is the E-Day a backup plan in case we have to revert to virtual learning, or is the E-Day built in for planning periods for teachers, or is the E-Day something to try to get classrooms separated for a minute? I guess I don't know why we're building these in. I have some ideas of why, but
we're getting a lot of feedback, Alan, I think, from you.
Okay, let's see. Let me mute mine.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, Ms. Bates, okay, so to kind of back up, before we have planned anything, we've tried to do our due diligence as a district and reach out to our stakeholders, our parents, and to our teachers. Kind of in, trying to anticipate what may happen should conditions not change between now and August, whenever we start, okay? So the feedback that came from our survey results, and then we also had focus groups with elementary, middle, high school teachers. We had focus groups to kind of meet with them and and to get their feedback. But based off the parent surveys, it seemed pretty conclusive. As much as 35% of our parents, to the question of if conditions are the same in August as they are today, they are unlikely to return. Close to 10% said they will not return until a vaccine. They answered the question in that regard. They will not return until there's a vaccine. Okay. So somewhere between conservatively 20%, in looking at the surveys, as much as 50% of the respondents, and we had respondents from parents that represented over 10,000 students in our district. So close to 60% of our students were represented in the surveys from our parents, all right? Close to 60% of our students' parents responded to this and told us if conditions based off their feelings today, full disclosure, they may change their feeling in two or three more months. We don't know, but all we can do is start planning based off the information that people are giving us right now. There seems to be a very strong likelihood that there's a significant part of our population that is not going to be comfortable coming back to traditional school, regardless if we offer it or we don't offer it. So I feel like, and our leadership team feels like, our responsibility is to provide a guaranteed and viable education to the students of Madison County. So if they're not going to be sitting in our classrooms, I know only one other way to do that, and that's to do that virtually. So when we looked at our survey results from our teachers, we looked at our survey results from our parents, we discussed this with focus groups of teachers, the overwhelming consensus was that our teachers wanted to have, and our parents wanted our teachers to have, I forget the phrase that we used in the survey, but they wanted a connection with the teacher, and the teacher wanted to be the person owning the lesson, owning the learning that our students were doing and stuff. So how do you make that work in a dual environment? I still can't sleep at night. And it tears me up literally every day thinking about how we make this happen. However, regardless, we're going to have to offer, I think our public is it appears as though our public is demanding that we offer education two ways. And that's as long as the conditions allow us to have traditional school as an option. The COVID-19 may decide that we're going to offer school one way, and that's virtually. But that will be a decision, made down the road. But so we've been working with our schools and thinking through this every day, and every Wednesday we meet with every administrator in this district, and we rethink through based off of between meetings, we have a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. How can we make this happen and do it in a way that's quality? Okay. So, some of our schools are looking at options of, okay, if 30% of our students don't show up, that's teachers that don't have kids in their classroom. Okay. So maybe then that teacher becomes the virtual teacher. Maybe then they're the person that's responsible for it. So to go back to your question, then why would you have an e-learning day? Well, I would love to say we are we're great at creating virtual lessons right now, but I think any district that made that statement would be being disingenuous. We have teachers that are really good at doing this work and have been doing this work already. But as a general practice, this is new to us. So I think we're going to have regular days in the schedule where we can take a pause, where we can make sure our plan is the best that it can be. It's also going to be our, if you want to call it, it's going to be our fire drill day. It's going to be the day that we practice what we're doing, because if we're doing a dual method of instruction, I think, again, it's whoever you want to believe and listen to, whether it's scientists or politicians or whoever. But it seems as though those who are in the healthcare profession and those in the science world continue to say there's a strong likelihood at some point in time that without a vaccine or without, some kind of miracle happening, we are likely to have a spike in cases. If we do that, I don't know what the guidance is going to be. In looking at some preliminary CDC guidelines and stuff and hearing our state leaders talk, it may be targeted closure of schools for a period of time. The school has a little spike in cases. And so if we have to shut down school for a period of time, we've got to be able to transition into those virtual lessons literally from one day to another. So all of our teachers have to understand how to do that, because if we start school in a dual mode and we have some teachers teaching traditionally and some teaching virtually, that works as long as the percentages balance out. What if kids start coming back? What if more kids leave? What if more kids get worried about being what if that number goes to 60%? We're going to have more teachers then shift to the virtual side of things. I mean, this is just a puzzle that can go as many different ways and scenarios as you want to try to paint it. But if we don't have some regularly scheduled time, assuming school doesn't happen totally traditional, nobody stays home. If we don't have to worry about that, we don't need the e-learning dates. If everybody's at school, or if that's the only option that we choose to offer our kids, then we don't need the e-learning dates as in our calendar. But our public seems to be telling us we expect something other than traditional school is what I gather. Ms. Rucker, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sherry.
So it's not possible for everybody just to sign up for school like normal, and then half your class may be doing it virtually and half be in the class. Is that what we're going to do, or is that not what we're going to do?
I suspect something like that is what is going to happen. Some percentage of the kids, their parents have indicated, roughly 50% of our parents indicated in their survey that their children were likely or very likely to return, even if conditions were the same, that 50% of our kids would be back in school in August. Okay. So I feel like a fairly significant percentage of our public is telling us, unless this thing takes a turn that we don't anticipate right now, our kids will come back to school. So I think that's a little bit of the dilemma that we're faced with, is trying to figure out, again, how to serve the kids that we're paid and, that it's our responsibility to serve, how to do that in the best way. And that initial data that came back to us was that they wanted their child's teacher and the way that I take that, because, somebody made a good point, but made the point, well, if a kid doesn't come back to school, how do they know who their child's teacher is? What I gathered from that survey result was that our parents trust their child's school. And if it's a teacher within that school, they trust that person. I think that's what they were saying. And they want that person to have some ownership, or people that are in their children's school to have ownership over their learning. So anyway, I mean, that's why we're going in this direction. But this, literally, I know it happens in y'all's world. It's happening in our world too. Literally, it changes daily. There are new things that come up that cause us to have to reevaluate, reconsider. In our task force meetings, they have been great, but so far, a lot of it is about again, playing out these scenarios, and they're endless right now, but we're doing the best. I feel like we're doing good work to try to figure those answers out.
So can I kind of just repeat back to you summarize what I want to make sure I heard you say correctly? The anticipation of this schedule is that we will have basically a hybrid of students. We will have some that want to be virtual and some that want to be traditional, and that number will flux back and forth. We may start out 50-50, we may end up 80-20, and these e-learning days are an opportunity for everyone to stop, pause, regroup, make sure we have the right settings, make sure we're evaluating how we're doing it, and then start afresh, because we very much expect this flux and change to continue throughout the next school year. So we're setting it up with built-in opportunity to evaluate how we're doing routinely.
You're great. Thank you for summarizing that.
Well, thank you for explaining it so well. I wrapped my head around it correctly. So that brings me to, do we have a fail-safe if this once a month does not end up being enough to be able to keep everything moving in an organized fashion?
I think that's the question. I mean, when we first started having the discussion of redesigning our calendar, one of our early conversations is, and again, from an earlier conversation today, our teachers, our students are only going to get a good education if we can provide our teachers with what they need, So, like, if we're asking, like, am I good with more days of e-learning to better prepare? Absolutely. I think we need to give our teachers the resources and tools to do their job that we're asking them to do. I know we also have to balance that with an economy that needs to get restarted, people that have to go to work. There's, again, it's putting people, I don't know, it's causing competing interests. Both sides really want what's best, kind of thing. But our teachers obviously need time to do this work and to do it well. So,
Right. Go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead, Angie. Finish up.
So in this new plan that will hopefully be able to solidify and start in the fall, the teachers will have had an opportunity to be more adept to giving more live instruction as opposed to kind of, I don't know what to call it. They just will have had time to kind of maybe perfect and get some ideas about how to do this, because I realized they had like 48 hours to figure it out this last time.
Yes, and that's one of the very first conversations we had with our administrators and stuff, is that this is not the digital backpack. What we did this spring is not what we're looking at doing this fall. These would be daily lessons in a learning management system. Most of our schools are going to use Google Classroom. Some of our schools we've used Canvas for a long time. A lot of our teachers have lessons created in that. So some of our schools are doing that. They're both fine. They both can deliver. They're a portal to deliver instruction at home. So, what we've asked our schools to do, and one of the things in our parent surveys was it needs to contain direct instruction. Now, does it have to, an example, a third grade teacher may video themselves giving direct instruction over, some language arts lesson, a math lesson, whatever. And then there's some independent practice in that learning portal that the student would work on. They would have that video. The teacher may find, some of you may be familiar with Khan Academy. It's a very popular online learning tool for mathematics. They do a great job of of explaining how to do different concepts and standards. But a teacher finds some other method to explain it and to embed that in the lesson. I don't think it's necessary that we recreate the wheel. But what we are not wanting to do and what we don't, again, can I say with 100% certainty that there will not be a situation where this would be necessary to happen? I can't say this right now, but what we are trying to stay away from is simply sending work home with the child and expecting the parent to figure it out and teach their kid. That's not what we want to do. And that's not what our teachers want to do. No matter how we put this together, our teachers want to own that instruction. They want to do it. And it's challenging their thinking right now for a lot of them, because a lot of them have never engaged in this type of instruction. It is challenging their thinking. But even within a week since we've started talking about this, it has been encouraging, not surprising, because this is the kind of people that we have. But people that were on day one that were in complete DEFCON 5 freakout mode have at least lowered down into the lower levels of that. And some of them actually are starting to create content, and I think they wouldn't admit it, but I think they're even kind of actually liking it. They're sort of figuring this out, that okay. And so what it is causing our teachers to do, which we've been promoting heavily for the last 3 years, this idea of collaboration, we're better together. Teachers that are very strong teaching in a traditional sense are having to reach out and turn to teachers that where maybe they were the leader in that conversation when they were talking traditional instruction. They're having to reach out to teachers that maybe are a good bit stronger in using technology, and finding that together they really are a much stronger team. So,
Tim, this may not be a question for you, maybe more for Alan, but I'll ask it anyway. So if there's the possibility that a good 40-50% of our students will not return to the classroom, are we going to do another re-registration so we know exactly how many kids are going to be in our classrooms and how many kids are going to be in the e-learning? Because it seems like this could get really kind of dicey moving forward, trying to figure out who's doing what.
Our students who are already registered, they're already in our district. So if they choose, to say, hey, I'm planning on keeping my child home, those numbers affect our ADM. That first 20 days, it affects our ADM. And so there's not a re-registration. They're already registered in our district, so there won't be anything of that nature. What we've got to be able to do is to make sure that we have things in place to make sure that we can accommodate the choice of learning that our parents decide for their children. Because if our ADM drops, then we're looking at an additional problem that's going to be compounded by just the COVID-19 shutdown and things of that nature if that takes place.
Yeah, and I may not have worded my question correctly. I guess are we going to send something out to parents so we have a definitive number of kids, that we have this many kids that are going to go traditional school, this many kids that want to go e-learning only, so that we can ensure we have the right number of teachers in the classroom and the right number of teachers doing that. At some point, are we going to send that out to the community so that parents can get that feedback to us so we can plan accordingly for the number of staffing that we need?
So what we have been doing, we've been planning for that. And so in our planning for that, we are actually looking to get that information through parent feedback, through connecting with schools, and whatever way that we can pull that information so that we can get that information, we'll be able to identify who's going to be in our classroom and who won't be in our classroom, who will be in our district, who won't be in our district.
So, question in regards to that, a couple things. One, if a parent on the fly decides they want to move their kids to e-learning, maybe they've lost comfortability with being in school or whatever the situation may be, The attendance will be documented when they log in every day. And assuming the teachers daily will have that coursework available to those students as an electronic method as well as the on-site teaching. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is correct. Even with our virtual program, when a student log in, when they log in and they're there for a certain amount of time, it's counted as if they are actually present. So yes, that will actually count as them being present.
Was the intent to vote on this calendar tonight, or were you guys going to continue to tweak it and present it to us at a later date? It's not a calendar to vote for. I just didn't know what your intent was.
No vote tonight. It was just to actually present the calendar, give you all an opportunity to look at it, and then vote on it on a later date. But
Okay.
Again, looking at the time frame and getting information out, we want to make sure that we're able to do it as expeditiously as possible.
Okay.
So just one more question about this e-learning. One more question. I'm sorry, Sherry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So the e-learning days that are built into the calendar, they're not for instructional days per se. Those instructional days are happening every day for the classroom instruction and an e-learning counterpart. That's just a reset day to just kind of formulate the plan, to discuss strategies. That's that day. That's not an actual day that we're going to focus in on e-learning, correct?
Well, e-learning will be taking place that day. I mean, and every kid in the district will receive their instruction that day virtually. But their teachers will be at work using that time to build new lessons, refine lessons, reevaluate if what's working, what's not working, kind of going back through those, kind of what we call our critical questions. What do we want every kid to know? How are we going to know if they know it? What do we do if they don't? What do we do if they do? But they're going to, I feel like they're going to need a time to periodically to hit a reset button on that and just get things to stop for a day so they can do that, but also have time to create, new content. So.
This is probably a poor reflection on myself, but I haven't done anything to register my kids yet. So when I go out there to do that, which I think you have till the end of this month, I believe, I'm going to have the option to say I want e-learning or I want traditional. Is that true?
No, ma'am. It's the option when someone registers, they're registering as a student in our district, not as an e-learning student, or they're registering as a student in our district.
Okay, so I think it goes back to Dave's point. So at what point is it going to be the first day of school that surprise 50% show up and 50 don't, or are we going to have a way of planning for that?
That is a good point. And there are different ways that we can do that. Just like we sent a survey the first time, we can survey our parents. We can get that information just as easy as we got the first set of information that Mr. Solly talked about, that survey that we sent out to see exactly how many parents were going to actually show up or send their students back. We can do something similar to that.
So do we have a date that we're going to say that we're going to, August 8th, we're going to know this information, or are we still coming up with that plan?
We have not set a date as of yet, but we will actually plan for that particular event and when we get that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a commitment from the parents. I mean, the parents need to be so that you and the staff and the teachers can plan correctly. I think we just need to make it very clear to the parents. You got one or the other. Initially, you got to give us an answer one way or the other. It's either you're going to be in school hard stand or you're going to do e-learning. Now that can adjust. We all know that's going to fluctuate and flex. But for your all's benefit and for the teachers' benefit, I think that we need to have the commitment from the parent that says, I'm either all in school or I'm going to be all in on e-learning. But I don't think we're going to be able to I don't think we can afford to, nor is it fair to the students to give them a choice up until the last day, to Sherry's point.
Well, things change every day. So to make them declare right away, it's not fair. As Governor Como said today, what I suggest everybody do is get up every morning and look at the data. And, I think this may be a fluid thing. If things don't improve, children might come at first and then go another way. But the main thing, I think, is that we have them enrolled and we can teach them one way or the other. And that way we maintain our staff and we don't come up in 2021, 22 and not have enough staff to cover the children who will be returning to school.
Most definitely. And my point was just that I think we need to have a date that our parents understand that they've got to be making this decision so that the central office staff and the teachers can plan accordingly. We can't wait till the 17th or 18th of August and let it happen. I just think that we need to have a solid date that they make that commitment based on how they feel at that moment or what the data suggests at that moment. That's just me.
One more question, and I'm sorry to belabor this point, but we talked about ADM last time. We had a meeting. If the kid is at home and chooses to stay at home and they're enrolled, they count towards our ADM, correct? Or will we have a situation where we'll have low enrollment because they've chosen not to come to the school? And then what? Or is there a possibility the state is considering freezing or locking in that ADM for the next couple of years so that to get past this situation with coronavirus? Has that been a conversation that's been had?
I actually spoke with the State Department and asked that very question, and there is no conversation. I mean, freezing the ADM is not an option. Students who are enrolled in our district, whether they're enrolled as a virtual student, and that counts as the attendance, that counts towards our ADM. Students who are there counts towards our ADM. What we don't want to get into the issue of is not having the students, because that affects our numbers, just like Ms. Stowe said. Whereas we have a set of numbers that causes us to have to lose teachers. We lose teachers for this year. Parents decide next year everything is okay, I put them back in. We're not funded to actually have that number of students in. So what happens is then we will have to have classrooms that have high, large, extra large numbers. And that's what we want to be able to avoid.
Right. And I'm fine with that as long as they're counted and we're providing high quality instruction, whether it's online or in person. I'm fine. I was just concerned that if they weren't here, the potential is they're going to not be enrolled, and then that would count against us. But if they're counting for us even when they're at home, then I'm fine with that. I understand.
This question probably is for Tim. In the past, mostly it related to our exempt policy, attendance being tied with being exempt from exams. But let's just say that we had a student that was involved in an accident, had to be at home for a long period of time, maybe not enough to qualify for homebound. Is this an option for them? It would be fluid enough that if they had been in the classroom, earlier, that they could just go right into whatever classes they were taking virtually without any interruption.
That's a great point, Ms. So and that's one of the things that first of all, we already do that. We have situations where students are exactly in the scenario you're talking about, and we've used learning management systems to deliver instruction on a limited basis to kind of meet their needs. But that's something that several teachers and administrators have discussed. Is one good thing about creating these lessons, and we're just going to assume it's going to be a year of instruction. Hopefully this is, whatever, a cure, a vaccine, whatever is in place well before the end of the school year. However, we're going into it as if it's a year. They'll have a year of lessons that were developed by our teachers, that if you had that scenario, it's there, it's ready to use again. So that is maybe an unintended benefit of doing this. So
one other question. So is there any do we have to adjust all of our systems so that we can click something to say, okay, now this student's virtual and this student isn't, when they flip back and forth, so we know? It just seems if you have at Sparkman High School, you got 2,400 students and you've got people coming in and out. It seems like it'd be very easy to lose track of people.
Well, maintaining, there has to be an adult maintaining contact and update with them doing their schoolwork. I mean, that's going to be, that should be the first sign. If a student is not doing their work, if they're not staying on pace, if they're not doing what they're supposed to there, okay, then an alarm starts to go off. And just as it would in traditional school, if a student didn't show up for 2 or 3 days, the school has mechanisms in place where they notify somebody to, okay, we need to start checking on this student here to figure out what's going on with them. Why are they not doing what they're supposed to be doing? Yeah, those things would need to be in place. Absolutely.
And just to clarify, in order to be counted for funding, the students have to be enrolled and present in our virtual school and enrolled and present in traditional school. So that's why it is important to make sure that we have those pieces in place. So if they don't show up, that we are actually checking and making sure that we can get those individuals and count those numbers.
So I'm pretty certain that I know the answer to this, but because of PLC, I'm assuming that there's a team mentality, so that if a teacher has to go out for 14 days on quarantine, there'll be another teacher that can pick that up with a fair amount of ease, because we're working through this all together. And I'm assuming we're going to allow students that are quarantined to kind of drift in and out as well with the virtual if necessary. Are we going to have any setup structure for that? Or is that going to be something we just kind of already have implemented in our culture because of PLC?
So the point you bring up about the teacher having to go out for an extended period, it is one of the, talking to administrators early this week, it's critical that every teacher know how to create content through their learning management system, because if your virtual teacher has to, if not just if they get COVID-19, I mean, there's other reasons teachers have to miss school for an extended period of time. And those teachers have to be ready to step in and fill that virtual void. We can, I hope that we can find people who will fill the traditional void. There will be people who understand how to teach in a traditional mindset, whether it's a long-term substitute, whether if it's a certified teacher that we have to hire during the school year, training someone to teach in a traditional format that's what they're trained to do. And even if it's a substitute, that's what they're used to doing and supporting. So, I feel like if we have to reposition teachers, it's probably going to have to, our regular staff is going to have to go toward the virtual side rather than trying to figure out someone to replace that virtual teacher. That seems, incredibly unlikely to happen. And yes, with students, having the ability to teach virtually this year, again, whether they get sick and are out for a period of time because of COVID or something else, this does give them an opportunity to continue their learning during that time.
Any additional questions before we move on to the next item? Dave stepped away for a moment, but he'll be right back.
Mr. Perkins, if I can add from the IT part of it, apparently YouTube is having a slight issue with some things. So my understanding is sometimes the stream is cutting out on people. That's on the YouTube end for those who are receiving it. Just if you get text messages, just check in with IT. So you know.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? All right, we will move on to item C, presentation of state health textbook adoption. Ms. Fisher?
Hello, thank you for having me this evening. I have a simple adoption to kind of overview with you guys tonight, so I'll try to keep it concise and be able to answer any of your questions at the end. Just to begin with, the intent is not to have a vote tonight, but to overview the materials and give you a chance to review those and answer any questions that you might have. So I will share my screen now. Okay, this is a 2018 edition of the Goodhart-Wilcox book. It happens to be the only textbook on the state adoption list, and it is intended for high school essential health courses. That is a half-credit course that's required for every senior to graduate. So it is a book that every student will have their hands on, but it's only a half-credit course, traditionally offered in 10th grade, and there are some unusual circumstances where it's at a different level. Our textbook committee, our principals nominated committee members in early March, and our copies arrived the week before we shut down for pandemic. Our initial meeting was scheduled for the Monday following our shutdown, and so a lot of our timeline has been skewed. We were able to work with a publisher who provided some online presentations to our committee members to overview the text as well as the teacher resources that were available, and also the online components of this particular textbook, which became particularly interesting to us at that point. The book itself is 800 pages. It's very comprehensive. The student digital materials include a 6-year access to an online learning suite and digital text access. One of the nice things about the online learning suite is that they integrate with both Canvas and Google Classroom, and all of the lessons in the traditional text and in the online text move fluidly between face-to-face instruction and digital instruction. So teachers would have tools to take the instruction digitally, with a day's notice, all of their materials and lessons that are provided by the textbook are already built for that environment. Just the general topics that are covered in the text are an introduction to why we're studying health and wellness, food and nutrition, personal health and fitness, hazardous substances, diseases, disorders, mental and emotional health and wellness, social health and wellness, and the human life cycle. I did take the liberty, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. Because there is danger in distributing those copies of the text, while I do have a copy for each board member and a copy for general review, I also secured online access for the e-textbook. I've included it in this presentation, which I will share with you afterwards if you don't already have access to it. And included in this slide is the username and password that you would need to access that online text. Having been in a high school environment in another system, I did answer questions frequently about the health course, and I did take the liberty of looking at some of the most frequently contested content in health textbooks and in health courses. I have outlined those here and provided page numbers for where the text deals with those topics. And just to summarize, it is a very clinical approach to all of these. The language is dealing with facts and data and clinical research. Students are encouraged to communicate with their families, and if that's difficult for them, they are given tools and approaches to communicating with their family and discussing these topics. It pushes the conversations that might be controversial back to their circle of trusted adults. And so to a large extent, it takes things that could be inflammatory or could be hotly contested and pretty much does not give an opinion one way or another, but encourages students to discuss those with trusted adults. The pricing on this product, before we even look at what the text costs, we are only intending to purchase a class set for each of the teachers in the district that teach this course. There are 10 separate instructors who provide sections of this. At the Career Tech Center, they alternate terms of that, so there would be a class that was shared there. So we're not talking about an adoption for every 10th grade student, but a class set of those texts with access to the online materials and the online learning system for that. So the text is $79.98 and the online learning suite access is $91.98, but we are able to get a bundle of those for $119.97. The instructor materials are valued at $396. Mr. Evans has already been in negotiation with the sales rep, and he was able to get the cost of those instructor materials included in the price for our adoption. So that's just a general overview, and I'd like to answer your questions now or do anything else I can to give you information about this textbook.
I'll ask the same question that's probably on other board members' mind. 800 pages?
There are a lot of illustrations. There are a lot of infographics. Health books can run traditionally very large. This one does take on a few more topics in terms of mental health and wellness, and instead of the mechanics of our body, it also takes in the mental health spectrum and how to go about relationships in a healthy way, how to recognize when relationships are not healthy. It does address bullying. It does address cyber issues. So there's some additional content in this one. It gets lengthy when it comes to mental health issues, but even with those issues, the lack of editorial comment is probably one of the selling points of the book. It is very research based. It's very factual, and maybe a little less preachy than books that I've seen in the past, one way or the other. While it does take on human sexuality, it is not taking a stance one way or the other. It does cover abstinence as a healthy and safe lifestyle, but it doesn't go too far into detail about some of the other options that people may consider.
Mr. Solly, do they get a PE credit for hauling this book around?
So because we don't have a copy per student, they only have to lift it from the shelf to their desk in the health classroom. If we're in traditional school, they do have access to to the textbook itself and to all of the unit lessons digitally.
Karen, any idea why there's only one book available for adoption?
In my opinion, this book is probably the least controversial in dealing with some of the topics that may come up in other editions. Texas and Florida and California tend to lead the way in textbook development, and then we may slap a sticker on that says Alabama edition, but this one probably is, for lack of a better term, it's probably a safer bet for conservative families in terms of the way that it handles topics that may be controversial.
Thanks.
Does anybody else on the board have any other questions for Ms. Fisher? If not, we'll move on. Alan?
All right. Item D, presentation on parchment. Mr. Traywick?
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Good evening, everyone. Parchment is forgive me, I don't have an official presentation there like Mrs. Fisher did, but I'm going to kind of talk through just an overview for you guys of the proposed contract with Parchment. Parchment is an electronic records fulfillment management system that will allow our registrars and our counselors to provide much more timely service to our students and our alumni and our third-party organizations that are requesting, whether it be a copy of a transcript or whether it be a copy of a graduation verification document. I had just an example of one way that we'll be able to use this and benefit our constituents is I had a young man who had graduated from Buckhorn High School a few years ago, applying for police academy with Huntsville Police Department. He did not have his diploma, couldn't find a copy of it, and HPD needed graduation verification. With us being out of school, everyone being closed, it took him considerably longer than what it should have to try to get that documentation that he needed for to apply for that police academy. Parchment would allow him to fulfill that request, or to make that request online and have that document potentially within 24 hours, at least an electronic copy of it anyways. The proposed contract, our district, what we are proposing going with is a blended model where we would provide a free electronic copy of a transcript to all of our current students. And this is just for the students that are in high school, our roughly 6,000 students or so that are in high school, free electronic copies, unlimited, anytime that they request one. The registrar would upload quarterly, she would upload a copy of the transcripts from iNow, and those transcripts would be auto-matched to the request based on the information that the student puts in and based on the information that the student is providing in their account with Parchment. The registrar will be able to verify that that's the correct student and then send that transcript on its way through Parchment. If they require a printed copy of that transcript, then it's going to cost them $2.95, which would be fulfilled through Parchment. The old school way of doing things and the way that we've been doing things for a while is the students would request those transcripts. They would request that in writing to the school. The school in turn would have a stack of those transcripts sitting on the corner of their desk, and they would go through those and they would fulfill them as quickly as possible by printing them, putting them in an envelope, mailing it to the requested location. That process is very antiquated and I polled our high school administrators, counselors, and registrars in early April, got some feedback from them. The consensus was almost unanimous that this process would, diminish their workload significantly in terms of fulfilling those requests. The blended model, and the piece that's going to allow the current students to receive those transcripts is going to cost the district $13,600 for the unlimited free copies of the transcripts for our current students. We can recoup some of that money, if not all of that money, by charging our alumni students and our third-party verification requests a surcharge. It's been proposed that there is a $6.05 surcharge added to the $3.95 fee that Parchment will charge for alumni requests. So, and the district will get 80% of that. So we're almost just under $5 that the district will get back on those alumni requests. And then for the third-party verifications, those are $12 from Parchment. And then we're proposing adding an $8 surcharge to that. So third-party requests would be $20, but the district would receive, again, 80% of that $8, so just over $6 that they would get back. Looking at the comparable or comparing those numbers to districts around us, that $20 for a third-party request is right in line with what most everyone else is charging. For the alumni request, $10 total is right in line with what they're charging as well. And those were recommendations from Parchment also based on what their current contracts are that they have with other districts. Again, this process would, just an example from one registrar, I asked them how long they spend fulfilling transcript requests. At the end of the year, it may take them more than a week or so to fulfill those transcript requests. This process here could take them less than 30 minutes to complete all the requests for, let's say, for Sparkman High School, who will have 600 graduating seniors. They can all get a copy of a transcript electronically in just literally a matter of just a click of a button. And so most of our colleges and universities that our students are going to now, that's how they prefer to get a copy of that, is electronically. And so I really think that that Parchment, based on the feedback from other counselors and other registrars, they say that this is something that we probably should have done about 10 years ago. What questions do you guys have for me in terms of the contract? I believe you guys got a copy of that attached to the Google Drive folder, as well as an overview there provided by Dr. Minsky. Any other questions?
Hey, Keith, I know that many of the schools use the funding that they get, the monies that come in for the transcript request that goes into the general fund of the schools. I mean, I don't know how much each school, high school, takes in, whether it's even significant. I'm not even too sure. My question is there, I mean, how is this going to impact, or how have the principals indicated how this may or may not impact their overall funding, general funding?
Yes, sir. So only a couple of the schools are actually charging current students for transcripts under our current process. Obviously the alumni request and third party request, those of course were getting charging a fee for those. However, in talking with a couple of the administrators, one school, Sparkman High School in particular, they stand to lose probably the most amount of money, simply because they're the largest school in the district, and they were in fact charging their current students a fee for a copy of a transcript. In terms of how that money could possibly be supplemented through Parchment, it's possible that there could be a way that maybe once the money is recouped at the district level, perhaps that money could be funneled back into the schools based on the number of requests that they receive. It's possible that money could be split up amongst the schools from the beginning based on the number of requests that's received at each school. So there is definitely a way to recoup some of that money for sure. But to my knowledge, Mr. Weiss, only a couple of schools really were making any money at all, and that was Buckhorn and Sparkman.
Thank you, Keith.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to the next. Item E. Item E, update on current feeding program. Dr. Ballard?
Good evening. I'm so excited to share just some updates with our feeding program. Again, we just have an amazing community, and the collective community impact is just, I'm almost speechless to describe how so many have come together to support our students. Well, one expansion of our partnership occurred on April 21st with the Heart of the Valley YMCA. And we expanded our partnership with them with their brown bag bus program. And so we started it on April 21st with them, and they are providing lunches daily, Monday through Friday, through July 31st at 8 different locations. And so at Hazel Green Elementary School, Riverton Elementary School, Madison Crossroads, Owens Crossroads, and Harvest Elementary, and then 3 community locations, the Berkeley Community Center, Kill Mountain Volunteer Fire Department, and Cave Spring Baptist Church. And so this provides 8 access points for our students to receive meals. But also I have to highlight some of our community partners who have been a part of this process since we started on March 16th with our COVID feeding program. The Care Center, Friends of New Market, Graces of Gurley, House of Harvest, and several churches. Not only are we, is the YMCA providing those meals, they're continuing, these organizations are also continuing with distribution of food and also delivery. So if we have students in our system who cannot get to the 8 feeding locations, we have volunteers from these organizations that are delivering meals to their homes. And so it just has been an amazing process to witness. Our social workers and counselors and administrators and teachers are helping with that communication as well as the coordination for deliveries. So to give you some numbers, since our last meeting, last update, from April 6th through May 9th, last Friday, over 10,000 meals have been distributed and or delivered. And so when we look at this collective period of time of our COVID feeding program, over 26,000 meals have been distributed and or delivered. And so it's just been a great opportunity for our community to work together to ensure that no child in our district is without a meal, without food. Also, I want to highlight the pandemic EBT. The Alabama Department of Human Resources issued a statement to provide us with an update. And so through the USDA Food and Nutrition Service, they have already rolled out opportunities for any student in our school district and across the state. If they receive free or reduced meals, there's additional income that can come to that family, and has begun, that process has begun if they receive supplemental nutrition assistance benefits. Now, if there are students who are eligible for free and reduced meals and their family currently does not receive those SNAP benefits, those families have been contacted and they can receive those benefits as well. They do not have to apply. And if there are students who attend any of our schools where they're community eligible schools and they may not receive free and reduced meals because their income may be a little higher, they still may be eligible. Letters have already been sent to those families from DHR. So there is a level of excitement in a way to know that through July 31st, there's a continuation of food services to our students. Are there any questions about the feeding program?
Thank you, Dr. Ballard.
Okay.
I just want to say that I think it's great that we've been able to feed that many children. And thank you, Dr. Ballard, for your efforts.
All right, item F, Discussion of future board meetings. Mr. Weiss?
Yeah. Okay. So when the original stay-at-home order from the governor came into place, it limited gatherings of no more than 10. For those that are familiar with the auditorium at the central office, and we did one meeting prior to that where we kind of social distanced ourselves with individual tables per board member. Some of those primary staffers sat at a table but socially distanced themselves. And so when that order came through, the stay-at-home order came through with no more than 10, we elected and we were given the opportunity to go to a virtual meeting setting, which is what we have been doing for the last 2 meetings, and now the third one is this meeting. The governor's declaration last week of a safer at home, I guess it was, at order, allows us to go back to doing open meetings at a location, whether it's the central office or another one. The problem we have with that is that while we can open the meetings, and I'm all for going back to having open meetings, I think before that I thought it was important for the public and the community to see that their governance is moving forward and working. The problem we have is the limited space. We can certainly do a meeting and have the board, the senior staffers there that are necessary, but then finding the space to put observers there, people from the community that want to come, and then physically distance, socially distance them is difficult. I've asked Mr. Perkins to look at using the career tech area. I know there's a large gathering area or a larger room than our auditorium over the career tech. Possibly setting that up in a fashion that would allow the board, the senior staffers, Ms. Thompson, and then design a way to put chairs in there so we get the 6-foot separation at best we can. We're still going to be limited. So I'd like to start our open meetings again next Thursday with the 21st of May, unless there is opposition to that. I certainly have no objection to any board member or senior staff member that wants to or feels the need to wear a mask. I think that's fine. It's appropriate given the circumstances. The question is, we would have to send something out, and Cynthia, I would ask that you chime in on this as necessary. We would have to send something out with our announcement that we would have to limit, based on social distancing guidelines, the number of people that could come in, and that it's a first come, first serve. If you show up and you have a seat and you show up and there's no more seats available, we would be forced to turn you away because we could not host you in our meeting. But I need to know, Cynthia, if that's something that we can do and not violate the Open Meetings Act.
Well, you have 2 avenues for your meetings at this point, and one is the virtual avenue that you're following now, and the other is the Open Meetings Act traditional avenue, wherein you would not be able to limit the public attendance. But that being said, with your meetings in the summer, if you were in that large room at the Career Tech Center, I would think that you could have significant space for the audience attendance. If I recall, that room's rather large. But I would rather you not put limits on allowing the public to come in. I would ask that you have the SRO there or someone who can have some role of authority to control the audience were you to have a problem. I doubt that you would, but you might want to have some crowd control type measures in place. But as far as limiting who can come in, that could end up with someone saying you're not following the Open Meetings Act if you do that.
Okay. Now, we are live streaming. This meeting is being live streamed. We're now recording it because it is live streaming, and it'll be posted. Well, it'll stay on YouTube. Is that correct? I think that's what Mark put out in a text earlier. thoughts from the other board members on resuming our meetings. And I don't know if we can put enough people over there. We may have to, go over there and set up chairs and see. But comments and suggestions or ideas from the other board members and thoughts. I'm open to anything and everything that the board would like to do. Crickets.
I think based on past attendance that Career Tech should accommodate us. I mean, you could take that to the nth degree, and the Coliseum, couldn't accommodate the whole system, but I mean, just reasonably in the past it would.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, we've been over there. We've had large gatherings with. Obviously, we weren't getting social distancing at that point, but I mean, I would think that if we put up the tables for each board member, for Cynthia, for Alan, and then the staffers, we should be able to put enough chairs in there to accommodate the traditional number of folks that come to our meetings. So I'm open to try it at least one, next week to see if it works. Excuse me. Nathan.
I agree, Dave, and I think we'll look at it via a live stream anyway. We're going to look at it YouTube. So I think the text will be just fine.
You were kind of garbled there, Nathan. I'm understanding that you say the tech center would be okay in your mind.
Yeah, to Sherry's point, the current numbers that come to our meetings, plus we have a very large group that looks at it on YouTube. So I think that'll be fine.
Okay. Anybody else, Sherry? Angie or Mary Louise? Mary Louise, go ahead.
We don't meet next week, do we? And at the 28th is what I have.
I thought it was the 21st I thought it was the 21st and the 28th. Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that's what I had written down.
Holy moly, okay.
The 21st is a personnel, just to vote on a personnel item.
Okay. Do I have that?
I don't have one on the 21st. Maybe I haven't accepted them all, but I don't have.
We didn't receive an invitation for the 21st, I don't believe.
I just had
That is correct. That is correct. The 21st meeting will happen if Mr. Perkins is ready for a recommendation only.
One thing you might consider on the 21st, if it's a vote on personnel only, there would not be any real public discussion probably. That would probably be a very brief meeting if you're just meeting to approve personnel. So you might consider whether you want to do that virtually and live stream it, or whether you want to all drive to the central office.
Well, I'm okay with doing next week's meeting virtually if it's just for personnel, and then that gives the district folks a opportunity to test drive the Career Tech Center. But Alan, you said the TRC is larger. I'm drawing a blank. TRC.
Teacher recess.
Okay.
Recess has a large room that may be larger than maybe the largest room that we have up here.
And I'm fine with doing one more virtual meeting next week for a quick personnel type thing, and then moving the 28th meeting to the TRC or to the Career Tech Center, and resuming our normal in-person meetings at that point in time. And we can discuss the specifics, Alan, on certain things. But that, like I said in the beginning, my hope and desire was to always continue to do the meetings publicly. I understand that we were unable to do that, and for good reason. But I'd like to resume with the board's concurrence our Open Meeting Act meetings again. So is everybody okay with doing it the 21st next week to give the staff at the central office an opportunity to set it up and see what we can accommodate, and then moving the 28th meeting from virtual to an in-person meeting on the 28th? Any issues, Nathan? Angie?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Mary Louise.
We'll need an invitation for the 21st if we're going to do it virtually.
Yes, we will. Sherry, are you okay with doing it on the 21st virtually and then moving the meeting on the 28th out to the central office area?
That's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll move forward with that plan, and that gives everybody an opportunity to check things out. Okay.
Dave.
Yes, ma'am.
Somebody that knows more than I do with the central office staff needs to look at those two rooms because they're totally shaped different. The TRC, so which one would be best for us? I'm not sure. It is a large room, but it is shaped different than the one at the Career Academy.
Okay. That's fine. I'll get together, Alan. You and I can get together and we'll figure it out.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Moving forward.
Administrative items. I recommend approval of the bids as attached and outlined.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Curry, District 1, and a second from Ms. Bates, District 2. Is there any discussion on the bids as attached? If there is no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 5?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye. Okay.
Okay. And item B. I recommend approval of the personnel items, including non-renewal, non-tenure list for certified and support personnel, and the temporary release list for certified and support personnel as outlined.
So I have a recommendation for approval of personnel items, including non-renewal, non-tenure list for certified and support personnel, and the temporary release list for certification, certified and supplemental support personnel as outlined.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from District 3, Ms. Stowe, and a second from District 2, Ms. Bates. Is there any discussion on any questions on anything?
Will this be communicated the same way as always or differently?
Yes, Mr. Cubic, did you want to answer that?
Ms. Rucker, the personnel agenda will be sent out to the administration as it always is the day after the board meeting. The non-renewal, non-tenure list and the release list for the certified and support, those will not be sent out.
Right. So how do the people find out?
Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be mailing out notifications. Typically, our administrators at the schools notify the people as far as the non-renewals and the releases. But due to the current situation we're under, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be notifying everybody through certified mail. So they will be going out tomorrow. They're all pre-prepared. They're going to be getting them ready to be mailed tomorrow, and they'll be dropped off the mailbox tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. Any other questions on that? If there's no other questions or discussion, we'll go for a vote. District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 5?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye as well. Okay. I believe that wraps up the administrative items and the primary agenda. We did have one item to discuss in an executive session, and Cynthia, you've got the certification for that. Is that correct? Well, actually, we don't need certification for what we're going to discuss, is it correctly? Cynthia?
Sorry, I had to turn my microphone on. If we're going to talk about the real estate question, that is a legal executive session, but it does not require certification. So you just need a motion and a second.
Okay, so I just need a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss the some real estate information. We will kill the feed for the live session, and then only the board members, Ms. Thompson and Mr. Perkins, will be on the Google Meet. Do we have to resume the YouTube feed to come back and adjourn? How does that work?
My suggestion would be that you announce at this point that there'll be no further action taken but adjournment following your return from executive session. You can choose to restart the Google recording at that point if you want to. I would handle it the way you've been handling your meetings in the central office.
Okay, so we're going to adjourn into executive session to discuss the real estate issues, and then we will adjourn immediately thereafter. There is no additional discussion or anything to be voted on coming out of executive session. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So I have a motion from District 1, Mr. Curry, and a second from District 3, Ms. Stowe, to move into executive session. Any questions or comments from anybody? Before we move into executive session, I want to thank everybody for their participation in this evening's meeting. To those that presented, appreciate it very much that you took the time out of your afternoon and evening to do so. It was well worth the information and good discussion, particularly on the calendar. Thank you all. So we will be moving into executive session at this point. The board, just go ahead and stay on at this point, and we wait for everybody else to fall off.
Give me just a second to kill the feed.
Okay, will do. Let me know when you be the last one off when you know it's been killed.
Oh, I'll be back in just a minute.
Yeah, that's fine. For the board members, if you need to take a few minutes of personal time, go right ahead and